This summer, I reconnected with my relationship with water. Faced with a shorter time for taking a little rest and limited resources in the ways that we all face those this summer, I decided that I needed to do something that didn't cost much money, that I could do without much travel. And I looked up in my garage and I saw the kayak that had been sitting there tied to the rafters of my garage for 13 years, and I decided it was time to take it down. So after much ado and a lot of logistical problems and some complications, I found myself out on the San Pablo Reservoir. And it seemed as if the minute my paddle hit the water and I began to find that rhythm again, it was like I had never left. Not only had I never left the kayaking, which I loved, but I had never left the water. It was as if the water was a bridge that took me from where I had been to where I was, that brought me into the present with some real stark relief, but also connected me forwards and backwards as well. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in his amazing novel, The Water Dancer, talks about this conducting property of water, and I won't say a lot more than that because that might be a spoiler, but he is very clear about the way that water can connect us, not only grounding us on where we are right now, but also tying us back to those who came before us, those who will come after us, and the wisdom that can pass through that on the surface tension. So it's an important piece for us to remember. Water reminds us of our basic rights, our right to live, our right to thrive, our right to health. And it's in that concept that I was really struck by the importance of water. I take it very seriously. This privilege to be able to speak with all of you. And so last weekend, I decided it was time for me to go back out on the water one more time. It was very hot last weekend, as you will recall, and so I was out there looking at the water. It wasn't quite as lyrical as it had been the other couple times I had gone this summer, but it was still good to be out there. And one thing I noticed this time was I noticed the surface of the water, because when you're in a kayak, you're right down on the surface level. So I noticed that surface level. And I also noticed the way that the drops formed on the paddle, and then they fell off the paddle back into that beautiful surface of the water. And I came back and I looked up some things because I remembered them in the back of my head. And I looked up what it was, these properties of water, and two of them came to me. One of them was the property of cohesion, and we know about cohesion. Cohesion is that property that says that like things will have a natural tendency, like molecules will want to adhere together. And all your scientists out there, I know I'm simplifying it, but bear with me. There's also the principle of adhesion, which says that unlike things that are different can form a temporary alliance so that they can be the drop, for example, that falls off my paddle back into the expanse of the reservoir. And it's these properties that give the surface tension of water that allows it to do things like climb up the long stem of one of the great trees, the long trunk of one of the great trees in California, and bring nourishing properties and nutrients to the highest leaves. It's that strength that allows it to come back together. And I think in these times of climate change, these times of economic change, political change, societal upheaval, we need to remember both the cohesion and how important that is. That's our long haul in our tradition. The reminder that we are all connected to one another. But we also need to remember that property, I believe, of adhesion, that idea that we can come together across differences and be those drops just for a few minutes, just long enough to fall off the paddle back into the water. And both of those, adhesion and cohesion, might be very important things for us to remember in these coming months. So there's another way that I reconnected with water this summer, and that is that I began to swim laps at the Y. Now, I reconnected with water, but not with swimming laps. I have never swum laps before in my life, and it's not something I would ever have done had it not been for this pandemic and my commitment to maintaining my membership at the Y as a nonprofit. I started to do it, started to swim, and I thought, I really dislike this. I am not a lap swimmer. I've never been a lap swimmer. Why am I doing this? I look terrible doing this. I'm sure other people are noticing that I'm not very good at it. It was a totally new thing for me. And yet I found that as I continued to do it, as I went back a couple more times, I found a rhythm. I found ways I could challenge myself. If you do 2 laps this way, you can do 1 lap on this easier way. I got myself this little kickboard that allows me to also work on kicking, because that is definitely not my strength. I'm never going to drown, but I'm also not a thing of beauty in the water. The point is, though, that it was something new, a new way I could connect to something life-giving. And that's something I believe we're all going to need in this time. New ways to find connections with one another, because we are going to need that in these times when we can't do all the things we wish to do. So trying something new, trying a new kind of group, trying a new kind of experience, just exploring something different than you've ever done. Sing with the choir, join a Touch of Autumn group, come to one of the Breath and Spirits, do something that you've never done before, and try it on. Because what we know is even in times like this, and I'm filming this on one of the days when it was darkest night in the middle of the morning, even in times like this, we know that we need to remember that we are better together, because we are. Thank you.